Hi, this is Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian nutritionist with Baby Blue Nutrition. And last time you heard from me, I was headed to the hospital. This was my souvenir. This is little baby Daniel. And he'll be joining us today because he's not in school with my other boys. So today we're going to be talking about tongue and lip tie. And this one wants to nurse. Great timing, and we're live. So let's figure out how to do this. Hold on just a minute. It's multitasking at its best, right? But that's what we do as moms. So I'm just going to adjust this so I can be a little more comfortable. Okay, there we go. So tongue and lip tie. It's an increasing issue, and a lot of doctors are believing that it's a fad because it's been more popular lately. It's been more common to diagnose it, and the reason why. Hold on, just a minute. Okay, I'm very modest with my breastfeeding, so I don't want a chance that you're all going to get a show here. So it's been more and more common to diagnose tongue and lip tie. And the reason is that we have an increased incidence of breastfeeding, which I'm currently demonstrating. It's a great thing that we have more and more women in the United States breastfeeding because it is the best nutrition for your little one. The reason why that causes an increase in diagnosing tongue and lip tie is because the bottle doesn't require the same motion as a breast. When you give a child a bottle, when they're taking milk from a bottle, they don't have the same type of suck as they're going to from the breast. So it's more common to find a tongue or lip tie when they're actually taking milk from the breast. So this is a good thing and a bad thing. You know, we want people to be breastfeeding more because it's best for them for their lifelong nutrition, but it's also resulting in us finding more problems with the tongue and the lip, and I'm going to get into why. There's a hereditary component, and then there's also a gene mutation component as well. But first I'm going to tell you what tongue and lip tie are. Tongue tie, also called ankyloglossia, is when you have a tight lingual frenum. So that's this here that connects your tongue to the lower part of your mouth. And so mine is far back, and it's not restrictive because I don't have a tongue tie. My husband does have a tongue tie. It's not restrictive, but it did prevent him from playing the trumpet in high school. So he was able to compensate. He was able to breastfeed. His speech is fine. He didn't have any feeding issues. Both of my twins, my boys, had tongue tie. One had to be revised and one didn't. And this little guy was born with both tongue and lip tie. So that's where the hereditary component comes in. There is a strong hereditary component, which seems to be going on in my family. When you have that tight frenum, it can impact your eating, speech, and oral hygiene. The way it can impact your eating is you can have reflux, problem latching. A lot of babies with a lip tie and a tongue tie, or even one or the other, have a lot of trouble latching, and they have a lot of trouble with their suck as well. It used to be, a tongue tie used to be diagnosed when the child couldn't stick their tongue past the lip like this, but now we know that there are different positions, there are different types of tongue ties, and they all have their different risks. So it really does cause a problem with latching, and I'll get into the symptoms on the mother, but the mother really notices that there's a problem when breastfeeding is very painful. There are, as I mentioned, 4 different types of classifications for tongue tie. There's the position and then how restrictive it is. When you look up, if you were to Google images of tongue tie, you would find most images are pretty drastic. It's going to connect from the tip of the tongue right here, creating a heart-shaped tongue, and it connects to the bottom, and you can see how someone with that type of restriction wouldn't be able to stick out their tongue at all. And that's going to create an impossible latch. It's going to create speech issues in the future, feeding issues in general. When you start solids, it's going to create a lot of different issues. So what my boys had was more of a posterior tongue tie, which can be very restrictive, but it's not as easily noticeable because it's further back. These things can be corrected with it's a frenectomy, where you go in either with blunt end scissors or with a laser, a CO2 laser, and you just laser off that connective tissue. And it sounds really awful, but it is less invasive than getting your ears pierced. It's less invasive than getting a circumcision, and they heal very quickly. The mouth heals very quickly in general. So another problem that we're coming up on that's related to the tongue tie and possibly the lip tie as well is the MTHFR gene mutation. And you might have heard of that before. Some estimates have around 50% of the US population having some form of this gene mutation. One of the consequences of this gene mutation is that you can't convert folic acid into folate. Well, I've spoken about this before, but generally the difference between folic acid and folate is that folate is the naturally occurring nutrient that you need in order to have, when you're pregnant, you want, it's to prevent spina bifida, the closing of the neural tube. There are other reasons. Folate is actually one of the B vitamins. But folate is the naturally occurring, and folic acid is a cheaper synthetic version. And so when you have bread or other grain products, when they're fortified, it's going to be fortified with folic acid. And many prenatal vitamins are fortified with folic acid, not with folate. The MTHFR gene mutation, and yes, I do see a very bad word when I say that or when I see it written out. That gene mutation prevents people from being able to convert folic acid to folate. So what happens is you don't have the nutrient that your body needs, and it circulates in the body unabsorbed. And there are a lot of consequences of that, one of them being tongue tie. There also is a significant hereditary nature, which I already spoke about. So lip tie is when the upper lip is tethered to the upper gum. So if you look at this area, up here, it's where the top of your lip connects. When you have a lip tie, it's that connective tissue goes, instead of from the top of the gums, it goes all the way to here. There are different ways to have it as well, just the same with tongue tie. And it prevents a good latch. And what can happen from that is swallowing excess air, which can present as colic, as gas, as just tummy discomfort in general. So the symptoms that you're going to look for as the mother who's just had an infant and is trying to breastfeed, you're going to notice cracked, blistered, and bleeding nipples. I was calling it road rash because it felt like it. Plugged ducts, discomfort while nursing, sleep deprivation due to frequent feedings. That one's really vague because when you have an infant, you are having frequent feedings. But if you're feeding every 45 minutes or an hour, it could be that the child is getting really tired from the difficult latch and is falling asleep. You could have thrush or mastitis. When you get those cracked nipples and you have a baby sucking on it, the baby has bacteria in their mouth, which is normal, but when you introduce that to an open wound, it could cause problems. Compromised milk supply. This doesn't happen immediately, as at first when your milk comes in, it's hormonal, but as you establish the breastfeeding relationship, it becomes a supply and demand type of relationship. If the baby's suck isn't strong enough because of structural differences like a lip tie or a tongue tie, then your body isn't going to produce enough milk, and that's where you get a compromised milk supply. Your supply actually goes down because you're only going to have enough for what the baby's demanding, and the baby's demand isn't what the baby actually needs because they have these problems in their mouth. The baby is going to show reflux or colic. As I mentioned, if they have a bad latch, if they have a bad seal on your breast, they're going to swallow some air, and that's going to result in gas and tummy discomfort. difficult latch, gumming or chewing nipples, gassy, poor weight gain, which doesn't happen immediately, but it will happen down the line if it isn't taken care of, and a clicking noise while sucking. And that click is pretty painful, I can tell you personally. Excessive drooling or choking on milk or popping off the breast to breathe. All of these can be symptoms of a tongue and or lip tie. Most of my information came from Arizona Breastfeeding Center, which is the organization that helped me to diagnose my boys. It's interesting, I really saw the tongue tie coming. Given the incidents in my family, I knew it was going to happen. I asked the pediatrician twice at the hospital, and she said there wasn't a problem. I asked the lactation consultant at the hospital. She also said there wasn't a problem. And I went to Arizona Breastfeeding Center and said, I am in a lot of pain, and this isn't normal, and I have a very high incidence of this in my family, and I really think this is a problem. She looked and diagnosed both. I then went to Dr. Catherine Cotton, pediatric dentist in Gilbert, Arizona. She's the one who took care of Shimmy's tongue tie as well when he was 2, because it wasn't caught before then by an ENT or by multiple pediatricians. And Dr. Cotton was able to take care of the lip and tongue tie all in one day. And I really had a good experience there. This is not a paid endorsement. I'm just sharing my experience in case it helps anyone. So if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to write in the comment section below. This video will be up. And I'm hoping to make a blog about this. And I'll be back next week, Tuesday at 1 p.m. Arizona time, which is currently 3 p.m. Eastern time, GMT -7. And Paula, I'm just wrapping things up. So please feel free to join me next week, and I am happy to hear any suggestions for topics, and I would love to hear your questions. Thank you.